Hi there. Good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you here to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show. This is a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So, for the rare change, I'm actually here early. That never happens, but decided to start a few minutes early. Just wanted to make sure everything is set up perfectly. We're not going to have any issues, which I don't think we will. I do have some issues going on with my internet. Some channels I'm not able to access for some reason. Couldn't use my MSI either. It wouldn't work properly. I was hoping to use it. It's a bigger screen. That's basically the thing I like about it. However, they're coming tomorrow to fix it. Hopefully, I don't have any issues with it when we're doing it tonight, but it could happen. So I'm hoping not. Let's hope for the best. So for those who are new to my channel, I hope that you will like and subscribe. Both those things help my channel quite a bit. And if you want to make any comments, you can leave them during the chat here at the side, and I'll try to answer anything that people ask or try to give you some discussion about what we're doing here. And if not, you can leave your messages in the message section at the end of the video, and then I will try to get back to them. I always try to get back. Most of the time I get back to people. Sometimes the odd message slips through and I miss it. It's not intentional. Sometimes it just happens. And for the most part, it's been pretty good. I like the talk. There's been some people that have introduced me to quite a few things that I hadn't heard of before, and that is always a good thing, So I guess we're almost at 8 o'clock now, so we're going to start. So my topic for tonight, somewhat like last week's topic, it is about my collection. So last week we did Camel. This week we're doing Eloy. Now, Eloy, for those of you who are not familiar with them, are a German space rock band. Yeah, space rock is really the best way to describe them. It's progressive, of course, but I always think of them as a space rock band. They're at some point, they became much more Pink Floyd-ish sounding than they were initially. But either way, I like both sounds of their music quite a bit. They do, in some ways, I'll say this, in some of their albums, actually, their Pink Floyd sound is actually better than some Pink Floyd albums, to be honest with you. Anyways, this is the band that have quite a good set of instrumentation on it. Like, their musicians on this band are pretty damn good, especially early on in some of their 70s stuff and early 80s stuff. Very good instrumentation, especially by the drummer and the keyboardist, I think. The main guy, of course, is Frank Borman. He does lead singing and guitar. I think he's pretty good guitar player. I don't think he's exceptional. I don't think he's like a top-rated guitar player, but he's good. He's not that great of a vocalist, but I think I've kind of gotten used to the sound of his voice. It doesn't really bother me too much anymore. Some of their album, and once I got used to his voice, I found that I actually quite enjoy their music more, because his voice was a bit of a distraction early on for me, but not so much now. So we're going to get started on the albums. So I own in total 8 Eloy albums, including 7 studio albums and 1 live album. And to be honest, I think the live album might be the best of the bunch. Oh, excuse me there. So we'll get started. We'll kind of put them in. I'm going to need a drink here. I seem to be choking on my drink. Anyway, so we're going to get started on the albums here. So the first one, I put them in the order in which they came out. I'm not sure exactly how many studio albums Eloy has, but I want to say it's probably pushing 2022, somewhere in that range. They're still putting stuff out. They put out an album last year. I suspect probably that next year or late this year, they may put another one out. They're like Hawkwind. They tend to put out albums fairly regularly, not as prolific as Hawkwind. For those of you who follow Hawkwind know that Hawkwind's got probably close to 30 studio albums now. Plus, Hawkwind is a prolific live album producer. They got another one out this year too, and I may actually purchase that one and do a live video on that as well. Because I quite like Hawkwind. Hawkwind and Eloy have a lot of similarities between them. Eloy, a little more Pink Floydish, Hawkwind, melodic and spacey, but a little bit of a different sound than either of the two bands. So anyways, we're going to go on to the first album in the discography according to release date. So this is the first one. It's called Power and the Passion. So I've listened to this in its entirety just once. It's waiting its turn to get into my playlist. It's a nice cover. Most of the Eloy covers, that's big thing about Eloy you will discover. Very colorful, very bright colors. They have an excellent logo. I like their Eloy logo. Of course, for those of you who may be aware of it or may not be aware of it, maybe you've heard this Eloy before. So Eloy comes from the Time Machine movie by H.G. Wells. They took the Eloy were the humans on top of the earth, and the Morlocks were the ones living under the earth that were, for lack of a better term, having the Eloy over for dinner in a more permanent fashion. So for those of you who haven't seen the movie, you should watch it. It's a classic. The book is a classic, but that's where they got their name for their band from. So this particular album, 10 tracks, 11. Most Eloy albums have between 8 and 11 tracks. Pretty melodic stuff, very heavy. Now, this one is an earlier on album, so not as Floydish sounding, but still got some really nice stuff here. I do like like I said, I do like the cover of their albums and the colorfulness of their albums. This is a kind of a blue feel kind of album to it. So I'm going to try and give you the musicians that are in there. So we've got, here we are. You got Frank Borman on vocals and guitar. Manfred Wesczark on organ, Moog synthesizer, mellotron, electric piano, and grand piano. Detlev Pitter Schwer, sorry, I always have a problem with his name, on guitar. Lucien Harvey Jensen on bass. Yeah, so this is a bit of the older band. So 75 release for this album. Strong album. Again, I'm waiting for a chance to put it into my playlist. It's actually, it's at the bottom there's 3 albums by Eloy waiting for their chance to get into my playlist. This is the one at the bottom, so it'll be the longest. At the present rate, I would say it's probably looking to be on my playlist maybe by November or Christmas time. I know that seems kind of far away, but albums sometimes stay on my playlist a very long time. Next up is this album, bright red colored, red, orange, yellowish colored Dawn. Another bright colored album. All their albums are like this. They have a fantastic bright colored theme that they like to stick to. So this album has actually been in my playlist. I didn't think this one was as strong an album as I thought it was going to be initially. This one came out the year after Power and the Passion. So it was 1976. Like the inside color of this quite a bit too. This one having just 9 tracks on it. A couple of songs pretty strong, but generally speaking, I didn't take to this album as well as I have to most of their albums. So you got Frank Borman, Klaus Peter Matzel coming in here, taking over the bass guitar parts. Detved Schmittensen is in here as well. He mostly keyboard stuff, and then Jürgen Rosenthal. So this is, to me, the best version of Eloy. So you've got all of the, to me, the premium, or if you want the classic members of the band here, really good. What do you call it? Instrumentation by these guys. Some of these guys are great. I think Metzel is fantastic. So there you go. That's Dawn. That's the second album in my collection. Next up is the live one. This may be their best album. So we're getting into the period where they're at their strongest. This live album came out in 78. It's got the classic lineup on it, the one I just told you. They play 8 tracks on this live album. Most of them, I've done a video on this, so if you want to get a more in-depth view about this album, you can go look at my live experience and find the Eloy video there on my live experience playlist, and you can get a more in-depth version of it if you wish to. I do like this. They actually sound really good live. I think this is one of my better live albums. I wasn't really expecting that from them. I thought that they were going to be more of a studio album just because of the nature of their music, the spacey sound of their music. But really, this is an exceptional album. It's easily, for me, one of their 2 or 3 best albums. And you got some absolute killer instrumentation on this album. The songs are clear. The sound is clear. The songs actually sound quite good and are not totally different from their studio albums, but with a kind of a live flavor to it. Yeah, so excellent album. Highly recommend it. It's not so dominated by one color on the album. So you got a little bit of blue, pink, yellow, orange, like a lot of different colors here. Usually they have a theme color for each album. Either it's all blue or it's all orangey, yellowy, or it's all greenish blue, or some colors that go together. So here's a nice shot of them. I like this picture. You can just get it to stay on the page. I like this. This is really good. Excellent band. They're still fairly young here, of course, too. 1978. So, well, all the songs are from their previous albums that a couple of Dawn there's some stuff from Dawn on here, and Power and the Passion on here as well. But there's some stuff on some of their even earlier albums that I haven't got yet, but I'm working to get. Yeah, this is a really good album. This is whenever I'm pulling out it, if I decide I want to listen to an Eloy album that isn't in my playlist, this is one of the ones I like to pull out. So next up, we have Silent Cries and Mighty Echoes. I call this the Green Album. This may be the most Floydish sounding album of all of their albums. Pretty heavy for a Eloy album, even heavier than you would normally get. The songs are fantastic. This is a strong album. I really like the opening, Astral Entrance, really great. And of course, I believe this has the classic group on it. I'm just going to take it out to look at it. So as you can tell, it's got that really green theme to it. Light green, dark green. A little bit of red thrown in there just for contrast. But yeah, excellent. And you've got, of course, Frank Borman. Klaus Peter Metzel is on this again on bass. Detlev Schmitchen. I can never Schmitchen, sorry. On all the like organ, keyboard stuff, synthesizers, all that. And Jürgen Rosenthal on the drums, excellent drummer. A very underrated drummer to me. A guy I'm starting to grow to like a lot. I can see if I do a top rock drummers again, he's going to eventually get in there because I just think he's great. This is a strong album, like I said, very Floydish sounding, heavy. Um, this is an album you put on in the dark, you crank it, and you just drift away into this spacey feel to the album. Yeah. So there it is, Silent Cries and Mighty Echoes, possibly their best album. It's definitely up there for me, anyways. And this, I forgot to mention, this came out in 1979. So that's the first four we have here, all 1970s releases. So there's still quite a few I need to get to fill in my discography there. But now we're going to get on to the more 1980-ish stuff. By this time, they've kind of transitioned fairly heavily into that Floyd sound. This was the first one I ever bought. Many consider this to be their best. It's definitely a top one for me, maybe top 3, 4 of their albums. Eloy's Colors. This one's got a little bit more of a color theme instead of just one solid color. It's got a little bit different. You've got a little bit of everything going on here. I still tend to think of it as more of a purpley color, but it does have a lot of different stuff. The album cover itself is good. So this was my first one. I got it fairly early on in when I started the channel, maybe 3.5 years ago. So this album was the first one to go into my playlist. Really quite a good album. It was in there for a while. Child Migration, Silhouette, very strong. So I'm in Horizons, the opening track, very good. So appearing on this album, Frank Borman, Klaus-Peter Metzel, Hans Arcona taking over the guitar parts here at times, and Hans Forberth on keyboard. So you got a couple of different guys coming in here to offset Schmidtchen's departure from the group, and Jim McGilvery on drums and percussion. So unfortunately, the drummer I like so much has left the band. I don't know if he actually comes back or he doesn't. So this album is their first in the 1980s. I believe it was released in 1980, exactly the year. Yeah, this was released in 1980. Strong album. Arguably one of their best. So for me, this was my first one listened to. I still think maybe I might like it a little bit more than Silent Cries of Mighty Echoes, but I think the live album is probably better than both. So next up is the 1981, next year out, Planets. I love the color on this. It was one of my favorite covers of theirs. It's kind of a white silver theme to it. It's a pretty strong album. I didn't like it as much as I thought I would. Sometimes I get the album cover just kind of builds it up for me, and it's not quite lives up to the album as much as you would think it would. But it's a solid album. I don't think it's as good as the previous ones I've done, but it's a pretty solid album overall. And it may grow on me. I like to give albums a little bit of a second chance. So you got Frank Borman, Klaus-Peter Metzel here again, Hans Arcona on guitars and keyboards, Hans Forbert on just keyboards, and Jim McGilvery on drums and percussion. And yeah, strong album. I don't know if the color is not really showing up here. So if I get up as close as I can so you can see the kind of detail here. It's kind of a demon angel type thing going on here. I'm not really sure what's happening on this cover. Planets is the name of it. I call this the White Album. Good album, solid album, 1981. We're going to move along here to this one's currently the highest one waiting its turn in my in my playlist. Probably within the next 2 months, it'll get in there. Time to Turn. This is a 1982 album, so coming out right after Planets. This one very Pink Floydish sounding as well. It's got kind of a blue theme to it. You'll see that with the album cover itself. Oh, and the name of this album is Time to Turn. I don't know much about it. I've listened to it maybe twice and was quite I liked it a lot. So I immediately put it in my playlist, waiting its turn. So every once in a while I pull it out and play it while I'm waiting for its turn to go on there. But it's a solid album. Again, Frank Borman, Klaus-Peter Metzel, Hans Forbert, Fritz Rainbow now taking over the drums, and of course Hans Arcona on guitars as well as keyboards and some percussion. So switch drummers again here. I'm not as familiar with this album as I'd like to be, but it'll take time. Nice picture of everybody. It's got a nice kind of cover to it. Their albums are really great. The color, I can't say enough about the art and the covers of them. Really good. This one has only 7 tracks on it. I believe there was, yeah, that's one of the least amount of tracks on any of their albums. Songs are a bit longer here. You got a couple that are fairly lengthy. I've listened to this a couple times, and of course, it's waiting its turn near the top of my waiters that are going into the playlist. So next up is another one that's waiting its turn to playlist. It's kind of the medium one. So it probably, you're looking at maybe 3 months or 4 months before it gets in there. This is Oceans 2. So I didn't get a chance to purchase Oceans 1. They did not have a copy of it, so I took Oceans 2. I like this cover. It's kind of a blue cover. Same kind of cover as you got on Oceans 1. This is a good album. I think there's 10. No, I was wrong. There's only 8 tracks on this album. This album is a much later date album. So this is a late 90s album. So very different than any of these other albums, which are all early, what I would call early to mid Eloy albums. Almost all my albums are within the first 10 years, except for this one, which is about 27 years ago, but much later than those ones. It's got a kind of a, like I said, a kind of a blue theme to it. The album itself is a little blue. It's a little bit different. I'm not sure who's in this album. I'm just going to check it out. I've only listened to this album in its entirety once. I thought it was very good. It's enough for me to put it immediately into my playlist waiting. So appearing on here, let me see. What do we got? Are they going to tell me? It doesn't look like it. It's got all the lyrics here. It might be at the back here. Just let me a second. Or maybe on this page. Oh yeah, okay, here we are. So it's a 4-man band again. That's pretty standard for Eloy. They did have a couple of periods where they were a 5-man band. Again, Frank Borman is here. Klaus-Peter Metzel. Those two are pretty mainstay. Michael Gerbach on keyboards. I think that's it. I love it when people do the writing on top of stuff and you can't read what it says. Yeah, it looks like it's. Oh yeah, here it is. The last guy is. Wow, that's hard to read. Bodo Shof, Bodo Shof on drums and percussion. I don't know him. I've not heard of him before. This is the only album I've seen him on. That's a nice shot there. This picture itself kind of reminds me of Amorphous Androgynous album with Peter Hamel on it. It's got that kind of feel to it, except for that was green and this is more of a blue color. So, yep, I like all of their albums, all the ones I have anyways. Probably the one that I like the least is maybe Planets. Planets or Dawn. I didn't take to them as well. They, for whatever reason, they didn't really catch me as well. Maybe they caught me at the wrong time. Hard to say. but all really good, solid albums. I'm going to reiterate the ones I have for you guys in case you want to make notes or you're thinking about which album you might want to try if you want to get into the band. There may be the odd person that says, oh, you know what, I like to get into these guys. So the first one I'm going to show you, Eloy's Power and the Passion, 75 album. 76 album is Red Dawn, or just Dawn. I call it Red Dawn, even though it's just Dawn. Eloy's Dawn from 76. Their live album, great live album. Can't say enough about it. This is from 78. Silent Cries and Mighty Echoes, the most Floyd-like of all their albums, 1979. Really good, really good. Next up is 1980's Colors, many considered to be their best album. I think the reason they consider this the best is it's pretty accessible. Most of the songs very similar sounding, but really most of them are kind of catchy. I like them quite a bit. Next, Planets. This is their 82 album, or 81 album, sorry. And you've got Time to Turn. This is their 82 album. And then you have this big jump in my collection all the way up to Planets 2, which is a 98 release. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there between those two albums, and a couple of albums that are early that I also don't have. I think I'm missing like maybe 2 or 3 prior to Power of Passion. And then I think there's one that's mixed in with this group in somewhere in there, like 78 or 77. I can't remember what year it is, but there's one in there. And then there's a whole whack between 82 and 98. And then there's a whole bunch in this century too. So there's no shortage. If you get into this band and you like them, you're going to have years of getting to know all these albums before you burn them out like me. So there you have it. My entire Eloy collection here on Into the Progverse. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. This one I found was a little bit more enjoyable for me than the Camel one. Not that the Camel albums are less or anything. I just haven't explored the Camel discography nearly as much as I have the Eloy discography. So that will be pretty much it for the episode. I was wondering, I'm considering what to do next. I may do something completely different next week's episode, or I may go with another one of these collections. I had been thinking about maybe doing my Gentle Giant collection, although I wanted to get in glass houses first, but we could do that again some other time too. So if anybody would like to see that, I can do that next week, or I may go with something completely different. But I enjoyed doing the collection because it gets me to think about the albums. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please hit the like and subscribe. That is much appreciated. And if you want to make any additional comments about any of these albums or Eloy in general, or if you got any questions about Eloy, or if you have any more suggestions about Eloy, you can do that as well. And we will be back next Friday night with another Into the Progverse. And I will let you know what the topic will be, probably when I do this week on Sunday. And just wanted to bring one more thing up. So I did get the Jethro Tull album. The new one came out today. I stopped by and picked it up. So we will definitely be doing that for the What's New Tomorrow. I wasn't sure we were going to be able to do it because you know how these things are. They may come out at a certain time, but maybe they don't get it at a certain time. But I phoned them this afternoon. They had it. I went and got it. Looks pretty solid. So that's what we're going to be doing for What's New tomorrow night. So I hope to see you all out for some Jethro Tull, their 24th studio album. So take care and have yourself a good evening. And we will see you tomorrow on What's New. Take care and goodbye.